Hello everyone. Welcome to the Geographic Society of Chicago's December Travelogue. I'm Joe Sullivan from the GSC office. I'll be moderating today. If this is your first time involved in our travelogues, welcome and thank you for tuning in. We've been around since 1898, GSC, and we educate the public about geography and its importance. Today's presenter is Joe Kezon. Joe is a geographer by profession, focused on the applied science side with over 40 years of GIS, cartography, and remote sensing. Joe loves hiking and exploring national and state parks, monuments, and forests. He, uh, he has lived in Boise, Idaho for the last 3 years, but Chicago will always be his home. His favorite national park is the Grand Tetons, as there is something mesmerizing about these mountains. Joe also likes to enjoy a cold beer at microbreweries in the surrounding areas of the park. Good man. Today, Joe will talk about the Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve, and we'll also briefly discuss the town of Arco, Idaho, and its interesting link to the Cold War. Joe, thanks again for doing this, and feel free to take it away.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank the GSC for letting me talk about Craters of the Moon today. So I just want to get started and say that if you were here thinking that I was going to be talking about Craters of the Moon as in the lunar landscape, I'm sorry to say that that's not the case. I'm going to talk about the National Monument and Preserve that's located in central Idaho. Craters of the Moon, no surprise, got its name because one of the explorers referred to the landscape as what he had seen through the lens of a telescope. So it is an interesting landscape. You'll see a lot of pictures here that we'll go through, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. So a little bit of background on the park itself. I say park, I should say monument, because it's not actually a park. The monument was established May 2nd, 1924 by President Calvin Coolidge, with the dedication taking place on June 15th of that year. So this year we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the park. Not a lot of fanfare. Most people probably have no idea where this is at. And if you're in the area, you really should stop by and see it. It's a nice place. In 2000, President Clinton expanded the monument with additional acreage, and at that point, it became the preserve as well. Like I said, it's a different type of beauty. The terrain is very rough. There's some beautiful trails. You can hike year round. The wildflowers come in bloom in May and June. So if you want to see the beautiful coloration, that's the time to go, I would suggest. The park is open year round. There's some limited camping in the park itself, so that no motorized vehicles are RVs or things like that are allowed to stay overnight in the park, though. In 2017, the monument was designated an international dark sky park. Again, it's in the middle of nowhere, obviously. Not a lot of visible light, so it is a great place to go see the sky at night. I unfortunately have not been there overnight, so I can't tell you exactly where how much it looks. And here we go. This is, as every national park, monument, forest, they have their traditional sign. When I first went here, I thought, oh, great, I'm already there. But you still had to travel about 5 additional miles from this time you find the sign to the time you find the park entrance. Being a Midwesterner, it's also interesting because you're driving through the high desert in Idaho, and all you see is sagebrush. So you see a lot of browns and yellows. And off in the distance, as I was approaching, I saw the black landscape, and I was like, oh, maybe there's some farming up ahead, only to realize No, that's the lava flows that are there. So with that, how do I get there? Well, Craters of the Moon is, again, in central Idaho, and it's really halfway between Yellowstone or the Grand Tetons and Boise. So if you're out visiting the Grand Tetons or Yellowstone, I would suggest you take that little trip across the border and venture into the park itself. Um, Again, the landscape it's beautiful driving. You got all kinds of mountains in the area, but you are also driving through um, the high desert. So it's not as beautiful as a lot of places, but it does have some nice things. Also, if you're coming from Boise along US 20, which is right here, there's a beautiful prairie called the Cambus Prairie that if you're there in May, it is fabulous to see because the number of migrating birds stop along the way there. So it is a pretty interesting place. So just to give you a little bit idea about the, the, the geologic time frame here, it was Quaternary period. Again, this is in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big space, right, in the landscape, but the lava fields here cover 618 square miles, which is pretty large. And again, it's mostly a Holocene age basaltic lava flows. And it is the largest contiguous in the contiguous United States. To talk a little bit more about the geology, the rock surface is volcanic. There's plenty of sedimentary features nearby because, again, this is a part of the Great Rift in Idaho, which is 53 miles in length. It's also in the Snake River Plain Basin, which is just south of the park itself. It's there's a lot of features out there, but the most distinct is that there's 25 volcanic cones and several lava tubes as well. Um, there are 60 distinct lava flows that have been mapped out over time, and they age from 15,000 years to 2,200 years old. You have both Aha and Pahoa flows. So those are the two main lava flows you'll come across the area, with Kings Bowl and the Wapatui lava fields being about 2,200 years old, not 2,000. Again, with this area, there are several open rifts in the surface, and the deepest is 800 feet, which I believe in the contiguous United States is the deepest rift that's visible. The Bear Trap lava tube is one of the longest tubes that is in the park at 15 miles, but you have to hike quite a ways to get back into it. Indian Cave is, you'll see photos of it further down the presentation, but that is a tube that you can actually get to. It's a little bit of a hike, but it's 800 feet in length. It's not easy to get into. I will say this about the monument. If you're going, you need to wear long pants. I would suggest hiking shoes or at least gym shoes, no open-toed shoes because the surface is volcanic and the edges are very sharp. You may want to bring a long sleeve shirt along as well, because once you get down into the tube or any caves, it is very razor sharp, as I would say. I learned the hard way the first time I went there. I did have shorts on. Turned out that big mistake. Not only was the rocks and the climbing it out very tough, but it was actually very cold in those caves and the tube itself. So the park, when you get in the park, there's a road that loops around to these various sites. So the visitor center, of course, is right at the beginning, but then you come across on your drive, the North Crater Flow is an area where there's a trail that when you park, you can basically, excuse me, get out and walk around. It's about 3/10 of a mile of length. It does have a boardwalk, so it is handicap accessible. Uh, there are there are only two locations in the park that you can actually get around these trails using a wheelchair. This is one of them. The Devil Orchards Nature Trail also is a boardwalk, um, so you can actually get around that as well. The cave area, it's kind of rough, to say the least. It's a little over a mile and a half round trip out. Um, it's on a paved but an undulating surface. So it's not easy to go. You would think that they would have potentially have made it level, but it's not that the case at all. Tree moles, broken top in the wilderness. Um, This is an out and back trip of 4 miles. There's plenty of up and downs, but it's well worth the hike out to see some of the tree moles that are out there. The wilderness is an additional 4 miles out. It's very rough hike through there. The Inferno Cone is about 2/10 of a mile to hike up to the top. It's about 165 feet in height at an 8.5% grade. They rank this as a moderate type of trail or hike. I would say it's a little bit more than moderate at times. Um, the Big Spatter Cones is again a trail that about a quarter mile. It's not so bad. Kind of see some things. The North Crater Trail is about 1.8 miles, which you start in one location and wind up in another, but you get to hike up to the North Crater, which is a very nice sight to see. So, like I said, you get when you're driving along US 20 headed east out of Boise, you come across, of course, the sign. Everybody's, stops, takes their family photos there. But it's just a sight to see because you have just these lava flows. This is looking back west from the sign itself. And again, you can see how rough the surface is. And this is just at the edge. So like I said, you driving along, you see plenty of this lava material on both sides of the roads, which is, again, an interesting sight to be seen. Off in the distance, this is one of the cinder cones. I believe this one is called, oh, what is it? The Big Butte. Sorry, it is the Big Butte, I think, and it's 700 feet tall. Again, you can see there's vegetation, which is, of course, an interesting thing when you talk about lava flows. This is a view at that same location, looking north, and these are the Pioneer Mountain Range in Idaho. As you continue along US 20, you finally get to the park entrance. The park itself at the visitor center is at 5,955 feet. So again, like I said, it's most people don't think of it as a desert because of the elevation, but that's exactly what it is. It's a high desert. So inside the park, this is part of that first trail that I mentioned. And as you can see, the boardwalk here, but you can actually see how rough it is. When you're walking around, you want to be careful again, and keep in mind what not the terrain so much, but you get off the beaten track. It's going to be a little rough on yourself. Again, this is the North Crater Flow Trail, which is the first trail. Interesting enough, this tree, oh, yeah, there's a tree that I have a picture of later that they were able to do a ring core on, and they determined that the tree was about 1,350 plus years old. They don't know exactly how old it is, but that's how it's interesting that that has grown after the lava flows had taken its course. Here's some just remnants of the lava flows. Again, these were the lava flows in the monument itself. They're not what you think of like at Mount St. Helens, where it was a bombastic blast. These were just slow flowing lava flows, kind of like what you see in Hawaii today. Again, you can see some of the small ropey lava features as you make your way around the park. Several of these flows are, again, very interesting. This is what it looks like as you start to climb up the Inferno Cone. Again, they say it's a moderate hike. It is pretty intense going up there. A lot of people stop halfway, which is actually where that person is. You're still not to the top when you get to that length. But when you get to the top, it's a beautiful sight. This is looking back north. Again, these are the Pioneer Mountains in the background there. And again, you can kind of see the difference in elevation there. And surprisingly enough, we do find dandelions. What you'll see when when you're walking around the top, you'll see patches, and it's almost like they're evenly spaced, and it's like, did somebody plant the vegetation there? But no, it's just nature's way of being able to support the vegetation within those certain regions. The lone tree at the top, it's a limber pine, which is common inside the National Monument. You'll see them all over. So it's kind of interesting up at the top to come across this lone tree. This is a look east, and those are, excuse me. Joe, I hope you can cut this out. Sorry. Gotta take a break.
No problem, Joe. Take your time.
Getting a little dry. To the east, it's the Southern Butte Range, which is again closer to the Idaho-Wyoming border. Again, this is another view of the limber tree up at the top. Again, these beautiful wildflowers are all over the place. Different types of flowers you commonly see are the dwarf buckwheat, bitterroot, Indian paintbrush, blazing star, the syringe, and monkey flowers. These purple flowers are the monkey flowers. And again, this gives you an idea of how sparse the flowers are up at the top of the cinder cone. So again, when you think about it, the top of the cinder cone, it's not really like very soft, it's very rough. But if you dig in a little bit, which you shouldn't, it is, you can see it is soft underneath the surface. And again, these are some of the common plants you'll find all over the place. Some of the sagebrush, again, growing all over the side. These flowers are beautiful. Like I said, they're short-lived, though. That's the only bad thing about it. You really want to get there in late May, no later than early June, because the the climate changes, things dry out. It's a very dry climate. I'll talk about the climate a little bit later. But again, it's just the coloration against this stark, rough background it's just simply amazing. So this is a short video from the top of the Inferno Cone. And I've been here 3 times, and it's as windy every time that I've been there. It's just a sight to be seen, but more importantly, it's just like you're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that wind comes out of the west. There's nothing there stopping it. So again, be prepared if you head out there, that when you get to the top, it is windy. But it's a fun little trip. So as we continue on into the park, so that was pretty much the Inferno Cone and its ventures, right? Next trail that you get to is the Spatter Cone. So you get to hike. It's a short hike up, and again, you get into an area and you start to see a lot of this rough volcanic look, but you can get in and see there's a bunch of lichen that's growing on the volcanic rock over time. Again, gives it some beautiful colorations. Again, some of the different lava patterns that you see in the rock. And this is looking down into one of the spatter cones from the top. It's hard to tell, but this little hole here goes down a couple 100 feet. It continues on. There is some snow that is visible if you're there at the right time of year. At late May, early June, there's some remnants here, but earlier in the year, if you come, the park road is closed, so you can snowshoe or you can ski to these locations. Again, I don't know how that would really be, because once you get off the road, I think you're going to have to snowshoe, seeing how rough the surface is. But this is the 2 spatter cones. You can see that walkway is paved, but it really is not handicap accessible. But they have tried to make some of it easier to walk to. But again, it's not for everyone, some of these trails. Again, you could kind of see this is from the parking lot. This is looking back at the Inferno Cone. And again, some of the numerous cones that are accessible, viewable from this road location. And if we look again, there's some of the lava flow locations. This is the Cascade Flow area. Again, very rough looking. There is some vegetation, but not a lot in some of these locations. This is one where it's very sparse. Again, looking back, that is the backside of the Inferno Cone with the big the Pioneer Mountains in the background. This is looking across the lava flow, looking east. Again, it's, I guess people would say, once you've seen one lava flow, you've seen them all, and that's true, but, again, I think as you go through, you get to see the different terrains. Um, this is on the path that leads out to where the tree moles are. Um, this is one of the cinder cones, which you can still see there's a depression here. It's very large. This picture really doesn't do it justice. But again, it wasn't like um, a bombastic flow. Again, it was if the lava had flown out and then it kind of subsided after it was done. And again, you come across the vegetation and the colors, the starkness of the colors is great. This is looking at Big Cinder that's out south of the location. And again, you there are more pines, but they're not very big, right? Even though um, we're talking 2,000 years since the last lava flow took place. You can see that the vegetation isn't very large at all. Again, the coloration in the lava itself, you get some minerals from the different vegetation that was captured inside the lava. And as the lava has now started to decay and fall apart, that those minerals are now being able to be exposed. And this is where, that this trail is supposedly moderate. You can see that there is a path. It's not very wide. It's very rough terrain, but again, it's a beautiful site. Idaho is no different than Montana, with the big sky country feel of it. Idaho, the skies are typically a beautiful blue. On this day, there was a front that had moved through, and it was kind of overcast and cold. But for the most part, you get out here, it's dry and very scenic. Again, just another view of some of the vegetation. These shrubs are very interesting because these flowers are, again, they flower and then they die off by the end of June. The moisture just does not hold in the region, so that the vegetation ends up dying. So here is some of the tree molds that you come across in this area. Again, they believe that obviously there was a forest in this area during the Quaternary time, and when the lava flows came through, they just did what lava does, right? It torches a path of destruction. Well, as the lava cooled, a lot of the trees were encapsulated inside the lava flows and then got exposed over time. Here's some of the Indian paintbrush. Again, it's just a beautiful site of information there. You get out and once you get out there, I'm sure you're going to be saying, "Oh, that's enough tree molds." But I'm fascinated with geology as a whole and fossils. So to see these trees from these lava flows, I find it very fascinating that it was able to be somewhat saved when the lava flow came through. I mean, you just figure about this extreme heat. And again, these trees, some of these moles go on. This is like close to 30 feet in length, even though it's a hard perspective, right? And this was one of the smaller ones that were in the area. But it's interesting. It's only this area of the park that these tree moles are exposed, which I didn't find a reason why that was, if it had just had to be part of the erosion process, or if that maybe it's possible that it was the only area where there was the forest. Again, the different amount of minerals that have been replaced. The trees were replaced from the heat, and the lava is interesting too. The blues, there's a lot of reds and greens you'll find out there. And again, it's not a smooth surface. I mean, I've never been to the lava flows in Hawaii, but I have to assume that they're similar in the rough appearance as well. But then you get in this area of the park, and these lava flows are pretty flat. But this is also the area where there's a bunch of caves and lava tubes that you can explore. Some of them they don't want you in, and some of them you can go. When you get to the park at the entrance, they'll ask you if you're planning on going into the caves, because you need to get a permit. And basically what they're trying to do is ask you several questions about, have you been in any recent caves? Are the clothes you're wearing the same clothes that you had worn in those caves? Because again, they don't want you bringing in material from another location and contaminating the site here. And that's pretty understandable. And again, this trail to get out to the Dewdrop Cave and Indian Tunnel, it's paved, but like I said, it's not flat. So you're going up and down. This is a look at Dewdrop Cave. It's accessible. I'm not young. I managed to get in there. But once you get into the cave, there's some various interesting fluorescence in the cave based on the bats that live in the cave and their droppings. But again, to be interesting enough, it's maybe 20 feet below the surface. There's plenty of snow still down there. So in the winter months, once I believe it's the end of October, they shut down the accessibility to the cave and the tunnel systems, just because of the snow and ice. This is Indian Tunnel. It's 800 feet in length when you walk. It's not the easiest to get into. There's a flight, there's some stairs that then lead to this boulder area that you have to traverse to get down into the floor of the cave, the tunnel. And you really need a flashlight, because you want to have that flashlight on as you're walking, because again, it's an old lava tube, right? It's not flat. There's cracks and crevices everywhere. There's loose rubble all over the place. So you really have to be careful when you're maneuvering through. This is what it looks like on the top of the lava tube. So you can actually see the path the lava was flowing, right? But again, we get down to the cave. This is this is snow. It doesn't look like it, but this is snow that is still in the cave into May. The first time I went in this area, there's an opening, and there was two giant crows up there in a nest. The last time I came, the crows were gone because the nest had been dislodged from the side of the top, and it was now was on the floor of the tube. Hence, they're no longer there, calling out to you as you're walking along. The other thing is, as you're going through, the cave is the tube is very immense. Again, you can see this individual here, so you can see how tall this lava tube is. And you can see the light, as they say, at the end of the tunnel. and you get to the end of the tunnel and it keeps going on for a little bit longer. And here it was pretty much flat surface, but it still was an interesting expose. So here's what you think is how you're going to get out of the cave. This big, beautiful opening, and it is a sight to see with that blue sky and how it lights up the tube itself. I mean, the colorations, it's just really pretty cool to see. But as you're crawling along, you start getting to, trying to get out. And then all of a sudden you realize the only way out is through this opening here to get back up to the top. And again, a lot of people turn around because it is not easy to get out of. I took a picture of this gentleman coming out because I was fascinated to see and watch people struggle to come out of the cave as I did. But again, as we talk about, again, this is back on US 20. Again, it's just, the area is just beautiful. I have a little video here of me walking through the Indian tunnel itself. You can see I know I'm walking kind of slow because, again, I was videoing, but I was also realizing where am I going and how am I going to get around without twisting an ankle on this surface. I, you know, I was fascinated by going here. Like I said, I've been there 3 times. I think every time I've been there, I saw something different. Before I forget, let's talk a little bit about the climate in the area, so you kind of get a feel. Again, it's a high desert, between 15 and 20 inches of rain a year. That includes 20 inches of snow on the average. The temperatures, again, just like any other desert, they are extreme, cold overnight and warm during the day. The summer temperatures range somewhere between 40 to the mid 90s in the hotter months, and in the winter months from the teens to the mid 50s. So it is kind of a flexible time, temperature range. As I said, it's open year round. And when November comes, they close the loop road, which goes around, but you can still ski or snowshoe into the trails. Again, the caves and the tunnels are closed, which people, have gone out there. I've known people that said that it's beautiful out there in the winter. Again, I would love to go back there at night because I would love to see the dark sky aspect of this. And another tidbit I think I didn't talk about was interesting enough, in 1969, NASA sent the Apollo astronauts to study the geology of craters of the moon because they thought that it might help them recognize geologic features when they landed on the moon. So Alan Shepard, Edgar Mitchell, Eugene Cernan, and Joe Engel were the astronauts that did go back there in 1969. And so there, let's start talking about Arco, Idaho, and why it has a tie to the Cold War. Arco is not a very big town. I should say city, I guess. It's in Butte County, Idaho. It's the county seat. The population is about 870 people and has been declining over the years. Again, there's not a lot in Arco. The city itself is just a little over 1 square mile, and the elevation is 5,325 feet. But nearby, you have the Big Lost River and the Lost River Mountain Range, which brings in a lot of people. It's a tremendous area for fishing and hunting and hiking and boating. So a lot of people come to Arco just to visit. But getting back to this, how it's related to the Cold War. In July 17th of 1955, Arco, Idaho was fully powered for 90 minutes by the Borax-3 reactor at the nearby Argonne National Labs. I know you're saying Argonne National Labs is in Illinois. Well, Argonne has a sister laboratory out in Idaho as well, just east of Arco. And that's actually where the first nuclear powered reactors were built and tested here. Because again, Idaho, there's nothing in Idaho, so there wasn't a large population nearby. So that is its claim to fame, that it's the first city to be powered by nuclear power, right? The group over at the Argonne Labs wanted to prove that they could power a city by nuclear power, and hence that's what they did. And more importantly, why it's interesting is they did this at a time during 1955 there was going to be the Atoms for Peace Conference in Geneva, and the United States wanted to go there and announce to the world that they have successfully powered a city by nuclear power. Hence the race for the Cold War, right? We wanted to be first because there were rumors that the Soviet Union at that time was working on their nuclear energy project as well and wanted to be able to come to the table first and say, hey, we did it. And so that's what they did. This building here is Recreation Hall. It was built in 1934. It started in 1934 as part of the Public Works Administration WPA program, and was completed in 1939. The hall is actually constructed out of volcanic rock. Shocking, right? And Harry Truman did address the residents of the area during his time when he came out to the area. Did I go? Number Hill, interesting enough, Number Hill, this started back in 1920. The Butte County High School started this tradition where every year the graduating class would go out and paint their class number on the side of the hill, which is kind of an interesting thing, right? Again, I had to do the research because I was like driving. I was like, are those numbers on the side of the hill? Sure enough, they were. Kind of interesting, they, like I said, you drive through the town, you'll see these little things about, hey, welcome to Arco, nuclear power by nuclear power, the welcome sign. It's kind of interesting, how they got the atom display and things like that. But also, you have this sail from an actual submarine, and they call it the Devil Boat, but it was really the USS Hawkbill. And it was given to Arco because of the nearby laboratory and its association with the birth of the nuclear navy. Because when Admiral Rickover wanted to construct the first nuclear submarine, that reactor, the prototype, was actually built over at the National Labs just east of town. So that's what we're going to talk about next, is the experimental breeder reactor. Again, just out down the road, about 15-20 miles on US 20. You get there, and again, this is a place that the first time I drove through, I didn't stop, but I went back because I wanted to learn more about this, because I started to get intrigued with this whole nuclear power thing, right? And again, how did it come to be? Well, they built this again after, the atom being split in Chicago and things like that. The talk was about, well, we can't build a nuclear reactor in the Chicagoland area. It's too close to the population and things like that. So they did stumble out here to the middle of nowhere, Idaho, and realized, hey, this is perfect. The geology of the area thought would support it and would be able to handle things like this, so that it was built. The experimental breeder reactor was designed by a man named Walter Zinn, who was from Argonne, that moved out to Idaho. The ERB-1 was built in 1951, and it started generating power back on August 21st of 1951. And on December 20th of that year, they successfully lit 4 light bulbs inside the facility. The next day, they were able to generate enough power to power the whole building. When you think about it, it wasn't that much. It produced 200 kilowatts of electricity, which isn't a lot. The ERB-1 became a National Historic Landmark in 1965 and was dedicated on August 25th when Lyndon Baines Johnson visited the site. In these pictures here, right here, this is actual chalk on the wall on the day. Zinn had everybody who had worked on the project sign the wall, except for the women. I know that's shocking, but at the time, they excluded the women. And, again, Lyndon Baines Johnson, there's Walter Zinn with the light. He gave the president one of the 4 light bulbs as a testimony to what they did. But in 1994, there's another plaque on the wall that has all the women who worked on the project. That was also included because of the fact that they had an important role in this history-making process, and they didn't want, we didn't want the women to be excluded from this. Outside, and the last thing I want to talk about is outside of the ERB. I don't have photos of it, but there are 2 ginormous airplane engines. They built these engines to be powered by nuclear energy. So they had reactors. Each of them weighed 200 tons. And then that's when they realized that they would not going to be able to sustain flight using nuclear power. They have them on site. It's kind of interesting to see, and it's also was again the knee-jerk reaction of the United States, because they had heard that the Soviet Union was working on nuclear-powered airplanes at the time, and at that time there was miniaturization of a nuclear reactor wasn't even a concept that they could wrap their brains around. And that's why the Idaho National Labs is an interesting facility still today. That's where a lot of the advanced reactor studies are going on. They're actually building miniaturized reactors that are no bigger than the size of a house. They're thinking that that could be a potential future. So Idaho, Central Idaho, you're thinking, I just want to go to Yellowstone. Yellowstone's nearby, right? I say take the time and effort to come over to Central Idaho, and visit Arco. Visit, drive by the Idaho National Lab. Stop off at EBR1 and listen to the history. They have interns that'll take you on a tour. You can just walk around by yourself. It's a great thing. And like I said, Craters of the Moon, it's a beautiful place. I'd say it's different. It's not really mountainous, but it's something I would definitely go back and see again. Sorry that I'm not able to answer questions today, but if you submit them, I will respond and they will be appended to this video. So this kind of concludes my talk. I'd like to thank you for spending the time listening to what I have to say, and I'm sorry about the brief interruptions, but that's what I have to do sometimes, stop and think.
Thanks, Joe. That was a great presentation. Appreciate it. And yeah, as Joe mentioned, for the folks watching, feel free to leave your questions in the comments below, and we will add them to this video. But yeah, we appreciate you taking the time, Joe, for our last travelogue of 2024. I had one question. I've been to the Grand Tetons before. How far would you say the drive is to get to Craters of the Moon from there?
So at the very beginning, I think I come back up. Kind of gave you a little bit of idea here. So this is your halfway. So it's about 190 miles. Again, you got to go up over the Teton Pass, which can be hairy in the winter. They just had a landslide at the beginning of the year, and they actually had to change the way the road was. It was closed for a little while the engineers try to figure out if the area was still going to be sustainable for traffic before they could make some major repairs. So they basically just cut the road short and made the turn tighter. But yeah, it's 190 miles. Yellowstone is just a little bit further, Again, it's a great drive from either Boise or those two locations.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty scenic along the way. It's a very nice part of the country. I think it's kind of flies beneath a lot of people's radar, but yeah, thank you again for doing this.